Good. So we are recording now. Welcome to Dharma Portal. Today we have a special guest, someone I've been wanting to interview for quite some time, Freddy Silva. We have a special treat today. Thank you for your time coming here, Freddy.
Oh, it's good to be in Ecuador, Josh.
Yes, it's very hot right now, and
oh, stop it! Stop it! It's freezing here. I had to break my car door open to get into my car this morning.
Oh my God, that sounds horrible. Okay, so if you could just talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and who you are.
Oh God, it's the most difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I know.
Do a lot of difficult things, but the most difficult thing is to talk about myself.
Yes.
Well, I guess I'm an ancient mysteries and restricted history author and researcher. I traveled the world looking at ancient information. My main focus is going back to the origin of things, and I've covered a lot of ground from crop circle research to the origin of ancient temples, megaliths, ancient cultures, from the Pacific all the way to South America and beyond into Europe, and also got into a lot of the practices that they were doing in the old days about resurrection, initiation, and I just released another book on the ancient origins of Scotland's sacred sites. So my focus really is on the ancient past and what were these people up to, and what can we learn from them, because they obviously left us a legacy that was using very large stones, and I suspect that they used very large stones to make sure that people in our era would know what they were talking about. Yeah. Of course, the paradox is that it takes a genius to work out what they were trying to tell us, because it's a different language. But if you're very patient, it eventually talks back to you. And that's my job. It's to try and sort of be a teacher or an intermediary between my experiences to show that there is another way of living life, and it's a very beautiful one. Yeah.
What I really like about your books is that you are, I can feel you're very intuitive. You're listening to your heart. It's not just academics. I'm halfway through your recent book, Scotland's Hidden Sacred Past. And as usual, the books are just is full of information that I didn't know. I'm always getting my mind blown. I love your books. It's really good stuff. So I'm halfway through, and yeah, it's amazing. But what I really would like to talk to you about today is your own personal experiences, that like how you are receiving and perceiving this information when you walk into these sacred temples, the more intuitive and spiritual aspect, stuff that you can't prove, stuff that we can't quantify this. So this is about feelings, intuitions, and more of the abstract nature. So I would love to ask you first, you have shared in some of your books that you have experienced some forms of initiation, awakenings, in certain processes that has changed you as a human being. Is this something we could go in and look a little closer at?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't go as far as saying there were initiation, because there was no plan. They're more, but they are to do with initiation in terms of what happens during a planned initiation. Yeah. It's more of, it's almost like I've walked into these things like a child, not really understanding what's going on or what's possible, and having these experiences, and from the experiences I then draw the information to do the work that I do, and slowly I develop as a person, as well as hopefully a good teacher. And they have shaped my metaphysical doctrine. I didn't know the things that I've experienced over 25 years were even possible in places like Stonehenge or the Great Pyramid, and so forth. But now for me, 2 decades later, it's second nature. And in fact, people say, well, there's a lot of information to go into the books, and there has to be a certain academic part of these books. I want people who usually don't believe in what we do to bring him over to, to the middle ground, to show that there's a different way of looking at the world, not just from an academic point of view. But the other part is to try and sort of demonstrate that there is something that is beyond our level of comprehension, which is personal. These are very personal journeys. And once you actually experience these things, a bit like people who have doctors who have near-death experiences. It becomes very real for them, and it changes their parameter, it changes their life.
Yeah.
Having said that, there was cases where Princeton University actually undertook experiments to go to places like Luxor and the pyramids and certain cathedrals, and they were able to actually monitor a change in the local resonance of the environment when people were interacting with the sacred sites. So where we used to think that these things were not quantifiable or quantifiable, now we can begin to figure out that there's a method that we developed that we can actually measure the change in perception relative to the way the temples work within a certain human being. But here's the rub. They don't work for everybody. You have to, they're not like a cure-all for everybody. And, for example, in your situation in South America, I know Peru very well. I go there once a year, take a group there. And these temples, they're not going to do something for you. They're going to be there to act as a kind of a gateway. You have to bring yourself and meet them halfway. You have to have a certain level of preparation. And I don't mean you have to read books. I don't mean you have to, unless they're my books, of course. You don't have to take ayahuasca. You just have to be open to a possibility. And I think that what happens is that when there's a certain resonance between a person that matches the resonance of a temple, there's this interaction that happens. And that's what happens to me. Of course, I didn't know this at the time. One of my earliest experiences was actually in a crop circle when I was in the middle of trying to understand how these things work. Now, we know the difference between what's man-made and what isn't man-made. And that's actually quantifiable and qualifiable. And there's a whole book written about this. So one of my first experiences was trying to understand how the laws of nature are twisted in such a way that allows a certain life force and intelligence to create these incredible shapes. But I was getting a bit stuck on these sides. I didn't really understand how all these things came together to create these shapes. And one day, without asking for it, I was levitated inside a crop circle. I was taken out of body. I still remember it very clearly, almost 25 years later, because it changed my life totally. I gave up my day job, gave up my wife, my life. I lost all my money, all my friends. And people don't do this unless they're rational people. You have to be a little bit mad to do this. But no, I had this incredible experience where I literally was on the other side for 45 minutes. And I have a time.
That's a long time. It's a
long time. And I can prove it because back in the days when we had cassette tape, remember cassette tape? Anyone who's listening who's under 30 will have to Google cassette tapes. I took a cassette recorder to the crop circle with a little bit of background music just to keep it company in the middle of the night. And I know it was 45 minutes there when I was under, because it played an entire side of the tape, which of course is 45 minutes. But it seemed like it just, the whole thing kind of took 10 seconds almost. But the amount of detail in the people that I saw, very tall people dressed in this kind of satin, white satin, you can never see the whole face. They're sort of covered down to here. And there's 3 on either side and 2 people at my feet or my head, because everything's in the 4-dimensional state. You can't really know what's right and what's left. And they were just doing these incredible communications with their hands, like geometry with hands. And I knew exactly what they were saying, but I couldn't intellectualize it. And when I came back and I hit the ground with a big thud, and I know because I had a big bump on the back of my head for several days. And that's where my first book came from. It was the complete download of information. And I just started writing like a lunatic. I didn't know where the stuff was coming from. It was coming in bits and stuff. But once I actually sat down, wrote the information, and then double checked it with available science, the 2 worlds matched. And that's what made it quantifiable for me. Because I needed that in my life in order to then tell other people who are skeptics that, hey, there's something very important going on here. And then from that, it was just taking the crop circles, matching them to temples around the world and looking at the fact that they are the same thing. One just happens to be made in pressed wheat. The other one happens to be made with big rocks. But the difference is there is no difference, and the effects are identical. So ergo, whoever was responsible for the crop circles was also responsible for the temple culture that we inherited. And I'm having very similar experiences, and people in my tours have very similar experiences relative to which temple they go to. So it's been part of my growing experience of understanding the other world, as I call it. But it becomes very practical as well.
So when they communicated with you, I'm assuming it was telepathically, and also you mentioned the psychogeometric shapes they created and stuff like that. So it's
It was like being with, you know, the dancers in Bali,
yeah, yeah,
they sort of did move like this. I've always wondered, what are the shapes that they're doing with their hands? And I remember that above everything else, there was this certain geometric communication with the movement of the hand. And I'll never forget that.
yeah.
And I'm wondering, is there something about the way they're doing this that's communicating with me at a cellular level, even though technically my body is on Earth, but my soul is on the other side?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the way that they communicate. And I'll tell you why. I had a similar experience when I was one night sitting with a group of friends on a mound in Avebury. We were been told by a couple of good psychics there's going to be a crop circle appearing that evening. And I thought, great, we'll get to sit on the mound and we'll have a clear view down the valley of the Avebury Avenue. We'll get cameras. Finally, we get to catch them.
Yeah.
Of course, they didn't tell you which side to look at. They could have been somewhere at the other side, you know.
Yeah.
And about 2 in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning, I decided it was getting a bit late in the night. Nothing had happened. And I remember just closing my eyes for a second, and all I saw was this tube going to my forehead with these electric geometric shapes hitting my forehead to such a degree that I actually opened my eyes and I turned to a person next to me who really understood this. And I said, what the hell is going on here? And she looks at me like, what's happening? I said, don't worry, I'm just going to sort of catch a little bit of sleep now. And the same thing kept happening. And I went, okay, what's going on here? That's all I said. And she said to me, are you getting the tube with the geometric shapes into your forehead? Yes. Oh, that's just the fact that we're sitting on the mound. There's no one buried here. The mounds are marking the point where the Earth's telluric currents flow through. They're like, you know, X marks the spot.
Yeah.
And between 2 and 3 in the morning, that's when they begin to activate. And it's the Earth communicating with itself through geometry. It's the systems language of nature. And also the universe is connecting with the telluric currents. Yeah. So whatever information is flowing through those currents, I'm picking it up. And again, the next day, I'm writing like crazy stuff, except it wasn't crazy because I could validate the entire chapter of information of how all of these processes worked. And by the way, the crop circle appeared behind us, just to make sure, just to let you know that they have a very weird sense of humor. So that was another experience to show that geometry is a great way of nature to communicate between systems. And that's why fundamentally everything that we see in the world that's organic is based on geometric shape, including us.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the Matrix where Trinity is getting to download how to fly a helicopter in the movie.
Yeah.
So because I mean, I've been having similar experiences myself, and in a fraction of a second, you can get information that takes decades to figure out.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like taking a minute of film, and you can watch every single frame, you know, of the 29 frames, and you can dissect it.
Yeah.
I had the same experience when I went to Wales to touch, which in hindsight was a very stupid thing to do, because when some of these stones haven't been grounded for a while, they pack a lot of electrostatic energy. I just touched this upright stone. It's a very, very large stone near the site where the stones from Stonehenge came from. And I got a massive shock. I mean, I was literally attached to the rock. Some guy had to come over and peel me off the rock to get me away from the rock. I had no idea if Tuesdays came in too, if my name was Mary or Bob. I had no idea for 24 hours. And then once I calmed down, I didn't stop talking for 24 hours. And I remembered everything that the rock had shown me. There were births, there were deaths, there were duels, there were marriages, there were divorces. The rock had memorized everything through different eras, because that's what electrostatic energy does. And in that one fraction of a second, I remembered everything, exactly like you said. So yeah, it's an incredible experience. It kind of leaves you wondering, how do you fit into all of this? And you realize, well, our world is very finite here in the 3-dimensional world. You're connecting with a 4-dimensional reality, which knows no relative amount of time, which is why you can never predict where crop circles are going to appear accurately. They're not working on the same time frame, and now I understand why. Yeah. Space and time is
our construct. It's our construct, it's illusion. So once you move into these realities, things start to get really, really intense and very, very different. Yeah. So have you had other? I mean, in my book, that's an initiation when you go through 45 minutes of out of body experience with downloads from these beings that seems to be recurring in your books, coming up again and again and again, that are referred to as the shining ones, or
Oh yeah.
yeah, like so.
I know them very well.
I will. Let's go in and talk about them a little later. First, I would like to touch in upon. I know you have had more experiences than these ones. You mentioned one in the Great Pyramid, right?
Oh God, yeah, that was amazing.
Could you please, in as much detail as you want, please give
I'll
us.
be here for a few hours. And again, I should point out to people who are listening that I don't go expecting these things. I mean, I'm learning as I'm going along. I've read about things like this, but until you actually do it, you don't know if it's possible or someone's making things up. So I approach these things with a very neutral background, because usually if you go into some place expecting something, it probably will happen, but it's in your head. It's not actually happening in front of you. You've got to approach it dispassionately, but with a certain level of commitment, openness and commitment. That's the best way I can describe it. And then I just don't expect anything. And usually when I don't expect stuff is when stuff happens. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
And also, on this particular occasion,
I just want to add in here, what makes it very interesting to hear it from you is also because you seem extremely grounded, and you seem to be
I'm a double earth.
you're really grounded, and also it's very obvious you appreciate science. And so if it can be explained away, you kind of like, it seems to me that you're very grounded, have a very realistic approach to things.
Because I think so much of the world is so overgrounded with logic that I feel, I mean, I could sit here and quite easily talk about channeling forever without giving an ounce of proof.
Yeah.
Because I believe in it and I experienced it, and I do it most of the time too. But for most people, if we're going to do our job properly, the big job is to bring more people who are not believing in this into the middle ground, so they can be much more accepting of a reality that we've experienced. That's the hard part. So it's not that I'm a scientist per se. I'm a scientist in training. I brought the science in to try and balance what I've experienced that can't be explained, so that it gives people a comfort zone in which to look at the information and go, well, maybe this is worth looking at. And if I can do that, then I'm doing my job properly.
Yeah, I fully agree, and that's why I'm actually doing this interview with you now, right? Because we gotta have to connect, to bridge. We gotta have to bridge. It's easy to find some spiritual new age channeling person who is completely out there all the time, all day, every day, but it can become too much to sit and listen to, and it's too flowy. And I mean, let me put it this way: I had my own near-death experiences, and spirituality has become a very practical thing for me. I am not new age. I am not into all this unicorn stuff. For me, it is spirituality and science is the same thing. For me, it's the science of spirituality. It has to be very grounded and very real and tangible. And of course, you can't make it that when it's only pure consciousness and you're diving deep into the more abstract nature of things. But it has to stay grounded. It's very important.
I mean, try and ask any scientist to explain love.
Yeah, good luck.
We have so many tools and so much technology, but how do you explain love? We can't.
No.
You can sit here and try and philosophize it, which is great. And the only way you can understand the unknowable is by bringing in different points of view and appreciating all of them and all of their flaws and all of their goodness. And that's what I enjoy doing. I appreciate different points of view, because none of us are right. Even I'm not right. And that we don't know everything. If we knew everything, we wouldn't have incarnated. Think about that for a second.
Correct.
If you know everything, you don't need to be here. You've come here to learn something that you're not aware of. So none of us have all the truth, but all of us have a little bit of the truth. But together, we bring in the big enchilada.
Yes.
Start putting things into the middle of the pot, and let's see what kind of stew we make. That's what I like about it,
Yeah. It's a journey. It's an exploration, and it's fun. And instead of trying to solve the mystery, we become the mystery.
Exactly. And then you're having fun.
Yeah. Now you're playing. Now you're really playing the game.
It's like asking Gandhi to explain democracy, and he says, "I think it's a great idea. I can't wait for someone to try it." I thought, what a great answer. We kind of defined it, but we don't actually know what it is, really. It's many things to many people. But yes, back to the pyramid.
Back to the pyramid. As many details as possible, because I feel there's something very important going on.
Oh, it was an interesting experience. I work with a closed channeling group in England. We go around picking up the pieces of rubbish that people leave behind at sacred sites and fixing sacred sites. And there's a lot of interesting people in the group, which I cannot mention who they are. A lot of heads of industry, for example, which is very surprising. And we do this work quietly, and many other groups are doing this around the world as well. It's we take it upon ourselves to try and clean up the place, make it a bit better than it used to be. And one of my first trip to Egypt was with this group. We did not manage to get permission to go into the Great Pyramid, because if you want to have an experience in the Great Pyramid, it's got to be quiet. You've got to be there by yourself. It's a personal journey. So we had about 12 people in the group, and we couldn't get special permission. So if you've ever gone to the Great Pyramid on a busy day, it's horrible. There's people screaming up and down the Grand Gallery. The place is so acoustically tuned that a small pin drop literally echoes into eternity. So you've got to be very quiet. And we're walking up and down. There's only 4 of us managed to get in out of the group. Sorry, 6 of us managed to get into the group, 4 men and 2 women. And as soon as we got into the king's chamber, the 2 women just didn't like the energy, and it's not for them. See, they liked the other pyramid better, the one next door. It was their energy, you see. So it was the 2 buildings just weren't connected. 2 temples weren't connecting, and that's fine. So they left very quickly, and suddenly the 4 men are in the building. And I remember everybody just leaving the building. Suddenly it was quiet. The kids stopped screaming. And we looked at each other like excited adolescents and said, wow, what a great opportunity. Quick, let's do some work. So, you know, we tuned into the room and the building. We did what we usually do, trying to clean up the rubbish that people leave behind. And then the lights went out. We're in complete darkness. I mean, it's pitch dark in there, and it's dead quiet. And one of the guys says to me, well, look, let's do some toning while we're here. We can project the intent that we're trying to leave here for the building through the power of voice. I thought, absolutely. Well, you do it because you're good at music. And I thought, okay. And there was sounds coming out from me that I have never was able to have done before, and I have not been able to do since. I don't know what was going through me, but it was like the symphony of Hindu, Chinese, Polynesian music. And it was wonderful. And I hear the other 3 guys also, you know, mixing in, and it's like this wonderful symphony of voices. And I couldn't say what, 30 seconds, maybe less. And we're in complete darkness. There's a whole group of about 30 very tall people that I had seen before in a crop circle came out of the stones, and they surrounded all of us. And I could see them as clearly as I'm looking at you right now. And it was an incredible moment, because we're in pitch darkness and I can see 30 people dressed in this white satin, and they kind of just slowly bent their heads down like this. And I did the same thing. It's like an honoring. And I thought, and we're still toning. And I'm going, oh, I hope they stick around for a little bit, a little internal dialogue. I hope they stick around because I got so many questions to ask.
Yeah.
And the moment I said that, suddenly, boom, the lights come back on again. And 4 guys, okay, very unusual to have 4 guys being very spiritual in the room. We're looking at each other like something just happened, but nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah. And we heard a very strange Arabic voice from downstairs shouting. And I figured, I think we've overstayed our welcome. Whatever just happened, we weren't meant to have this. Quickly, let's go take turns in the box. I'm not going to call it a sarcophagus because no one buried in there. Yeah. Let's take turns in the box just to feel what it's like. So each one of us took about 5 minutes, and then we left the building, and we're completely dazed. I mean, completely in shock. And we're outside, and you could tell that these guys wanted to say something, but no one wanted to be girly enough to say anything. And I said, all right, I'll be the girly man. I'll start. Did anybody see what I saw in there? And the next guy says, oh, the people that came out of the stones. And then the next guy says, yeah, and they're really tall. They're dressed in this sort of satin. And I said, so all of us saw this in pitch dark. And we went, yeah. And we went very quiet again. It's like, oh my God, what just happened? Now, meanwhile, the rest of the group caught up with us. They'd been outside doing something else. And we're stunned. We're not saying anything. We've lost our ability to communicate. And our fearless, glorious leader says, so how was it? And we're going, okay, take your time, come back to Earth. So we were tuning into the building. We found that there was another city underneath the Great Pyramid, which actually there is. Just ask any archaeologist around Giza. They'll say there's a whole city under there. It goes all the way to Saqqara, by the way.
Wow.
And then we ran out of time, and we figured, let's find out what the guys are doing up in the building to see if they're behaving themselves. We have a lot of sense of humor in our work, by the way. Mm-hmm. And they said, wow, wasn't it great? You actually did the job that you're supposed to be doing. You were honoring the building, and the priests came out of the stones and they surrounded you. Mm. We had not said anything about this, okay? So they couldn't have made this up. And I said, that really happened? Well, of course it happened. Why do you think we're doing this? I'm going, wow. You can tell I'm just starting in my work. But what about the thing with the boxes? And that's all I said, because what happened with the boxes was very unusual as well. Now, you have to understand that there was 4 men. One was 5'4", one was 5'10", and I'm sorry if you work in metric, I don't know what this is. One was about 6 foot tall, and I'm 6'5". So you got 4 guys with a big discrepancy of height. And every one of us said, wow, it's amazing. I lay down in the box. It was exactly the length of my body with the flat of my head and the exact width of my shoulders. When I go home, I'm going to have a box made the same size just to commemorate this experience. Every one of them said the same thing. And I said, well, that's impossible. We're all different widths and lengths. How can the box just change shape? Now, I didn't say any of this. And our fearless, glorious leaders said, well, the funny thing about that box is it's living stone. When you reach the resonance of the building, the stone adapts itself to the adept in the box. And that's where you go walk about in the other world, because that's exactly what happened. Excuse me, I get very emotional about this. You literally got sucked into this wormhole and you're in this other level of reality. And I'm still processing what I saw and what I experienced after 25 years. Yeah. It still forms part of my understanding of what's going on. And part of it's also my journey as well. It's a personal experience. But I can tell you that in 5 minutes, you get to travel a long, long way. And I began to understand the purpose for what the Great Pyramid was built. And that's what led me to eventually write The Lost Art of Resurrection and see the pyramids in not just as one, but as 3, as a continuum of a big sort of area of initiation, at least on one level. And I should say that there's a small pyramid that's actually the most important one, because no one pays attention to it. That's where the big secret is. And I haven't quite cracked it yet, but I'm pretty close to. Okay. So that's what happened. And it changed my life forever. And I quit my day job and I lost a lot of money, and who cares? Yeah. Here I am now, 7 books later, and still, practicing what I'm preaching. Having fun. And having fun. That's the important thing. Yeah. I'm very serious about my work, but I don't take it too seriously, because in this line of work, you can lose your sense of humor, Yes. You've got to stay a little bit light all the time. Absolutely. You got to have fun. So do you want to share any of the experiences for those 5 minutes that you were out? Well, I'm still processing it. I'm not quite sure what happened. I was with people that seemed very unusual, but somewhat familiar. I was receiving information that eventually became the foundation of my following books. Although I didn't know it at the time. I just received little snippets of things. And then I would write notes down on my little notepads that I carry with me. And then I go back home and I process the information and I'd reread what I wrote. And I thought, that's interesting. That's a good idea for a foundation of an idea. And I'd sort of open up the information, for example, to do with the way that temples were hardwired according to the rules of the earth, which I had no idea what they were talking about. And I figured, well, perhaps what they're saying is you have to dissect what the temple is in order to understand what it does. Mm-hmm. And that's what led me to understand and build the concept of temple making, which is my technique of demonstrating to people how to build a sacred site in a living room. I'm sitting in one right now and you can't tell, but you can feel it. Anybody that comes here knows they're sitting in a place which is very unusual to the surroundings. Yeah. And it was all about understanding that every temple that you see in the world is based on 7 laws to do with water, electromagnetism, sacred measure, sacred geometry, direction, and so forth. There's also another secret element, which I can't tell you, of course.
Okay.
You have to look at the documentary for that. But there are 7 unique rules which build and transform any location on the planet into a sacred space.
Mhm.
So the buildings may look beautiful, but that's just to get your attention. The rest is what's inside them and what makes them tick, right down to the Gothic cathedrals, which are built exactly in the same way, for the same reason, and crop circles, which are built exactly the same way for the same reason. So that was just one of the snippets of information that I was given, and it's given to you in a kind of like an anagram. You have to actually do the work. They're not going to just give you the laws of physics or the universe. They're going to give you a little anagram, and then you have to do the work. Otherwise, what's the point of being here? Yeah. And that's the challenge, to look at the information, step back a little bit, remove your ego from the equation as much as you can, and then say, now what's this about? And the moment you do that, boom, books fall out of shelves, coincidences, strange people that you meet that have the key to the next part of the puzzle. And that's what becomes my work. So that's one of the things that I got from this journey, a little snippet of something. Yeah. I'll give you another example. I was, in fact, this is on YouTube. Someone filmed me during one of my tours in Saksai Waman, or Sexy Woman, as the locals call it. Yeah. They're kind of funny too. And it looks like I'm drunk, or I'm suffering from altitude sickness, because I'm having a hard time trying to communicate with people. And it wasn't. What was happening is I'm trying to describe what the temple is about. And yet in my left ear, I can hear someone whispering to me what the temple is supposed to be, which none of us really knew. So I'm having a dual conversation. I'm trying to remember what's going on in here. So I finish and I go, I hope I can remember all of this. And once that they all go and play, I just sit down with my notepad and write down quickly everything that I'm told. I thought, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know this was possible here. And then I spent 6 months researching the information that I was given in this ear, and it's all there. And finally worked out what Saksai Waman really is. And it was all to do with the fact that you have to look at the origin of the name of Saksai Waman, and the fact that it's also to do with a falcon, and you have to see the site from the air, not from the ground. And that's when you realize that when you actually see the site as it used to be when it was complete, because half of it was taken downhill by the Spanish, it forms the wings of a bird, of a falcon. And a visiting Egyptian would totally understand this, because it literally means the place of the satisfied falcon. That's an Egyptian phrase. So what were the Egyptians doing in Peru, I wonder? And that's helped me to understand the whole concept of why Saksai Waman does what it does. So that's just one snippet of the information that I'm getting, because that's my job, to try and retrieve information so that I can publish it and give it to people. So you will have a completely different experience, because that's your journey. So it's whatever you're bringing to the temple in your path, it will open that path.
Yeah, absolutely. So the ancient ones went through a lot of trouble to build structures that is awakening something within us that is life-changing for people like you and many others. So initiation is important. It's a big deal. It's huge. It's huge. And so
it literally means to become conscious. That's what the word means.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that is huge.
That is pretty huge. I had no idea.
So when I go into my experiences, sacred geometry is definitely something that I'm seeing very often. And when you go in and research these things, you will find that even your body follows specific sacred geometric and mathematical formulas. So we are divine beings in a sense of we are following some specific harmonics. So when things are in complete harmony and sync and in equilibrium with itself and its environment, that is what we call sacred space. And that is also what we call to be awake, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So we have these temples, we have these initiations, deep spiritual experiences. Where is these tall, light, shining ones fitting in this picture? Who are they, and what do they have to do with this process?
Oh, they're a very interesting group of people, and the more I write, the more I get to understand them. I thought I knew pretty much everything I knew about the Shining Ones in my second book. 7 books later, I've actually caught up with them again, and I've learned more. And they were actually physical at one point. They were part of the lineage of the people of Anu, who are called the Anunnaki, literally people of Anu,
Uh-huh.
who unfortunately, thanks to Zecharia Sitchin, have been given a very sort of dark image. But people need to understand that Sitchin was approaching it from his point of view. That's
Yeah.
not necessarily who they are. I mean, they were not perfect by any means, just like humans aren't perfect.
And,
And they were physical, and they basically conformed to the same rules of the physical world. So they were good people, and they were also quite nefarious people.
exactly.
Unfortunately, we tend to focus on the negative, and that's what stuck.
Yeah.
So part of my job is to rehabilitate the Anu, and the more I understand them, the better they are. So these people were living entities 12,000 years ago, and a lot of them were described as the gods. Now, a god is nothing more than an individual who understands and applies the laws of nature. That's essentially what a god is. It's not a guy with a white beard sitting in a throne, and that's a Christian view, and it's very, very wrong. So these people had control of the laws of nature, and they were able to bend the laws of nature within the rules of nature itself. And that's why they were able to do strange things like lift big stones and understand the rules in which to govern in a perfect way. Or not, or you can misuse the rules as well. Now, after the Great Flood, 11,000 years ago, most of them died. In fact, the Egyptians wrote about them as the Aku Shemsu Hor, the Shining Ones, followers of Horus. They said that most of the divine inhabitants of those lands actually drowned as well. Few of them survived, and they became the people who took on the bloodline, the divine bloodline, into 7 parts of the world from which humans suddenly discovered civilization at the same moment around 9,000 BC. So there's a coincidence here.
Mm-hmm.
And their job was to help humanity elevate themselves, or at least to supply them with the accoutrements of civilization and let humans do what they do best, which is think about it and then fight among themselves. But slowly, there's a gradual upward movement. Things here on Earth, things here work glacially. They're very slow. You know, that's the way it happens here. And eventually they died out. They could only breed within themselves because they were very tall. Anywhere between 8.5 to 12 feet tall. And this is actually written in one of the temples of Egypt on the wall. And they couldn't interbreed successfully with human women. The women died during childbirth. And there are Native American cultures here in America that still talk about this intermarriage. And the women didn't fare very well, but it took them a long time to work out the DNA manipulation to a point where they could marry human women. And that's where you get the concept of half human, half divine rulers around the world. And then slowly, as thousands of years go forward, they eventually kind of just die out and fizzle out. The bloodline literally just fizzles because the special ability that they had literally was in the blood. So once you mix it with human blood, you kind of sort of diluting their ability. But it's still around in certain places. Now, just because you're dead doesn't mean you can't be useful. Most of them are now, of course, in the other world, and their job has never stopped. Their job has always been to communicate with humanity and anyone here, because they understand how difficult it is to be in the human form. It's very limiting. We are subjected to all kinds of things here, beauty, tragedy, and so forth. And we're always searching for enlightenment. So their job is to literally communicate with those of us who are open to try and influence those people to become teachers, to show that there's another way to live. So these are the enlightened people in our culture around the world, always have been. They are communicating with this other world culture called the Shining people. A, because they were called shining, A, because they were very enlightened, so it gives you a certain glow. That's the metaphor. Yeah. But they're also shining because when they were in physical form, they used to apply a kind of sunscreen to their skin. They were skin was very sensitive to sunlight, and it made the skin shine. And that's where the acronym came from, that they were the shining people. But they are still guiding people to this very, very day. And I was amazed to find that going back to the crop circle phenomenon, that they were the core group of consciousness that was actually behind the original making of the crop circles. So that's where the story comes around full circle between crop circle and temple, because we've stopped building temples over the last 2,000 years, which is now why I'm engaged in teaching people how to build their own sacred space wherever they live, to rebuild the technology. And it can be very subtle, by the way. And so we've come around full circle to try and rebuild this world that we're stuck in right now, where we're literally in the middle of a crossroads. If you haven't noticed, the world is literally falling apart again. It does this every so often, but right now it's pretty serious. So it's odd that the shining ones are attaching themselves to more and more people around the world right now at a time when we really need it. But they're only giving you the tidbits. We have to apply the information. So we're part of the solution as well.
Mm-hmm. So today, in today's world, things are going becoming very polarized, to say mildly. So there's a lot of darkness, and anybody who is going more into the occult, esoteric teachings and knowledge, they will definitely recognize that there's also some dark forces at play that are also from the other side, from the fourth dimension, and that are influencing people in a very negative way. And so do you feel that the shining ones are in some way they have branched? There's some people saying that these Anunnaki, there's the good guys and there's the bad guys, and some of the bad guys are still here running the show and creating a lot of problems here. And then we have the shining ones, those that you're meeting, that are trying to bring in the spiritual dimensions and awareness, all that stuff. Would you agree with that, or would you say that this is some completely different entities and beings that are influencing what's going on Earth right now?
It's the story is much more gray than this. It's very complicated. We have to look at the universe as a very complex environment with trillions of people and trillions of beings just like us, and they have their issues and they have their enlightened people as well. Now, the one thing that I've learned, and I used to be very much into conspiracy theories and light and dark and stuff, and I've evolved over the time based on my experience. And the one thing I've come to understand is that there's no entity in the universe that can influence what's happening here on Earth. They can only suggest. And if I as a human being choose to tap into a dark energy, that's where I'm going to go. Mm-hmm. Because it defies the first, what I call the Prime Directive, which is the Star Trek version of things. And Gene Roddenberry knew about the Prime Directive because he attended the same seances that I was attending as well. That's why Star Trek is so important, you see. He wraps it in a space age theme. Now, in my line of work, we call it the law of non-intervention. That's how the universe told us, the spirit world told us. We have a rule in the universe called the rule of non-intervention. There is no entity that can intervene in the development of another species. You can ask us for help, but even so, we can only suggest. You have to actually make the effort to communicate with that information. So everything is open to humanity. There are good things, light things, and there are dark things too. They're all there. Now, if we go in a certain direction, we'll meet enlightenment or we'll meet dark. Mm-hmm. But we are part of that problem, and we're also part of the same solution. So the dichotomy that we have here is also mirrored on the other side as well. That was a bit eye-opening. I thought that this is much more intricate than I thought. But there are a lot of entities circling around the Earth at this particular moment in time, because whatever we decide to do in the next decade, and then the window really is closing. I mean, like I said, it's very polarized right now. But we've been in this situation in history before. I mean, we've had world wars, and the situation was much, much worse in all the times. For example, to make me much more happier during COVID, I've been reading a book called 1665 about the worst year Britain has ever had. Now, if you want to have a bad time, try dealing with bubonic plague, the blowing up of the British Navy by the Dutch, and then London is set on fire. Now, that's a particularly bad time. COVID is nothing compared to this. It makes you feel happy. So it's another process that we're going through. The idea is that we're going through a process where we need to pick out a better way to live. We've reached a point where the Earth is no longer able to keep up with the consumption of the human race. Mm-hmm. By the time we get to about July the 20th every year, the Earth is no longer replenishing the replenishables. We are living on borrowed time, and that date gets shorter each year. And this is a measurable statistic. So we can't go anywhere but down from that point. But at the same time, I'm watching children appearing all over the place who are coming up with the most incredible solutions to life's problems, because suddenly within the darkness, there is you're growing the seeds for a new idea. So I'm actually feeling quite positive that things are very dark and light at the same time right now, because it shows that the people that are trying to make a change are doing their job properly. If life was actually quite quiet, I don't think I'll be doing my job properly.
Yes.
Because that's what happens. You bring in a new idea and people will fight over it, or they will believe it, or they will not believe it.
Yeah.
But it's up to us to choose what eventually is in our best interests. That's where we're going to go. So the potential is there for us to go into a new level of order. So in the meantime, the choice that we make will affect the outcome of all the entities around the earth, you see, because they tied into us and we are tied into them as well. And that's why they have an interest in looking in and saying, perhaps this is not a good way to go, because this is going to impact us, our development negatively as well. Perhaps we should suggest that you go in this direction. And that's why they make crop circles. The idea is in the shape of the circle, because we no longer have the access to so many of the temples. A lot of them have been destroyed or altered. Yeah. So they're suggesting ideas, and they're putting the idea into our head, and it's up to us to work out, well, what do we do with the information? Well, for example, two great things that we've learned in crop circles. I developed a healing modality with the symbols, which are doing incredible things around the world, and we had no idea how influential this stuff was going to be. We've developed technology, which is anti-gravity technology, in 3 different countries based on one design of crop circle. That's all I can tell you right now, because politically it's quite sensitive.
Yes.
I'm letting them bring this out when it's the right political time to do so. People have a habit of being run over by their own hydrogen-powered car, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
So people have to be very careful. You've got to choose the right moment. And we also have new mathematical theorems. So the ideas that are being communicated from the other world are being implemented by certain individuals around the world, thinking that the ideas are coming from them. It's like, oh, what a great idea I just had. Of course, it's been suggested, and someone has looked at it and they see the potential, and that's how the change is evolving. Yeah. And at the same time, that change is creating a backlash from the people that want the old paradigm, and that's what we're caught in right now. The trick is to stay upright, follow your own path, follow your truth, and tend to your garden, and let someone else copy the garden that you're making, and that's how you get through it.
Yes, stay focused on and stay centered and stay in your heart.
Exactly, and keep a sense of humor and drink heavily. That's my suggestion.
As long as you're having fun doing it, yes.
You have to have fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying this circus of planet Earth right now. I mean, it's a trip. It's wild. It's crazy. I can't believe we signed up for this, but and so
there's a small print. Oh, there.
They forgot to tell you about that. You said that these beings cannot go in and do direct influence on Earth. So the flood, the sinking of Atlantis. So some people believe that these Anunnakis brought in this big rock and created this flood, that they planted, they made it, they created it. Would you say that? Do you subscribe to that idea?
Absolutely. I wrote about it in my last book, The Missing Lands, and but you have to go back to the original story, not the way it's been altered by writers or people with a certain Christian point of view. You have to go back to the original writings here, back to Sumeria, and no interpretation by modern authors. And then it becomes very clear what was going on. There's a context missing here. Okay, because I had the same idea as well. I read Sitchin when I was younger. I was very influenced. I thought, wow, this is interesting. But he got a bit right and a lot wrong as well, unfortunately. Yeah. But we'll take the bit that he got right, because you can't throw everything out. Someone always has something good to say. Yeah. And it's interesting because you look at the context, okay? Now, there was a small group of the people that were the craftsmen that were helping the Shining Ones, called the Watchers. So they were like the go-betweens between the people of Anu and the humans. They didn't want to interact with humans too much. For all kinds of reasons, which I won't go into right now, but mostly for good reasons. Yeah. So the Watchers were responsible for being the go-between, the messengers. But then for some reason that we don't know, because the text is broken up, a small group of the Watchers decided to, hey, Earth girls are really cool. We want to hang out with them. And they defied the direct order not to mix it up with human beings because they're still at a different level of development. And we're trying to assist their development very casually and very slowly, okay? We suggest things, we go away and let them figure it out. Because it's a very dangerous thing when we have one developed group of people telling undeveloped people information, and they have to go, they have to raise themselves to this level, and that takes time. It takes hundreds or thousands of years to get there. So when you start giving hunter-gatherers information that is way above their pay grade, it's only going to cause problems. And the other big problem is that they were trying to mate with human women, and the two DNA just didn't match. Now, that is absolutely correct, because the offspring that came from them were extremely tall people who were not quite in the right place. And the next group of offspring that came from this offspring, that they called the bastard sons of the bastard watchers, they were the real problem. They were red-haired giants, all covered in red hair, and they literally were huge, like 12 feet tall, and they ran amok. They bred like crazy. They ate people for fun. They developed warfare. They taught humans how to fight each other, and they were literally running the planet. And there was this wonderful moment where the other watchers that stayed loyal to the Lords of Anu said, we have tried to actually bring in the children of the bastard watchers, the Nephilah, the children of Orion. And we don't have the manpower to round them all up. We're putting them in jail. We're putting them in special pens to, actually, we just want to kill them because they literally have destroyed the earth. Humans haven't got a hope in hell of survival. They're going to be overrun by a planet of giants, red-haired apes, essentially. So there's this agonizing moment in the story where the Lords of Anu are in council, and they figured, there's no way out of this. Humans are not going to make it. It's our fault. We feel responsible for this. We're going to have to use our power to, where are we? Let's take a prognostication of the sky. In about 200 years, the Earth is going to be crossing a certain meteor shower, which, by the way, still happens every November, the Tauri meteor shower, the one that's responsible for all the problems here. And they said, at this particular juncture, there'll be big rocks that the Earth is going to be crossing through. Let's use our power to move those chunks so that they definitely will hit the Earth. It'll cause terrible destruction. It'll create a flood. Most people will die, including us. But the Lords of Anu and the Watchers that will survive will be in charge of basically helping the human survivors to get back on their feet so they can restart Earth. So we owe them a modicum of gratitude, because that's why you and I are here right now. Mm-hmm. If the Nephilah had been allowed to continue their rampage, right now there'll be no humans. The planet would be overrun with very tall, red-haired humanoids. Mm-hmm. So that's the true story behind what really happened. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm trying to teach people to rethink the whole concept of the Anunnaki as not being bad people. Although if you look at the story of Enki and Enlil, yeah, they're the classic two brothers fighting each other. Enki is like, well, let's give humans a chance. Let's help them out. I can see their problem. He was very empathetic. And then Enlil's like, just get rid of them. Just a waste of space. They're like, rivaling chivalry. Yeah. So, and that's the story that I read going back to the original teachings. And I think that makes a lot more sense, which makes it, which is why the Watchers and the Shining Ones also stayed behind to help humanity. And then we developed civilization from them.
Yeah. Well, but that tells me that they did interfere directly.
Absolutely.
But so what is stopping more dark, sinister beings out there to interfere directly as well?
Now, that's a big question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It was one moment where there was the whole council meeting. Again, half of the information is missing because it's lost. It may be still buried somewhere in Sumeria. We don't know. But the only thing that I could sort of see, just taking a little step back, is that there was a big conference about this. They mulled all the different possibilities, and they knew the situation was out of control, and they were partly responsible for this. And I think at that point they said, well, the only way we're going to redeem this is to help humanity get back on their feet, is to wipe out most of the planet and then help the survivors get back on their feet. That will be our way of fixing the problem. And then our sort of interaction will be just to tell humans how to grow wheat, how to do animal husbandry. And exactly at that moment, all across the earth, that's where we learned these things. And that's how we developed from hunter-gatherers into civilized societies. And it worked for quite a while, and then it all fell apart again. And then it worked again, and then it fell apart. That's the way humans are. So, you know, based on what little information we have there, that's how I see it, that they were trying to redeem the situation by literally violating the very law that you shouldn't be doing. But if they had applied the law, there'd be nothing left of the planet either. So it does make you wonder what the end plan really is. And we don't know. We can only conjecture at this point.
So do you think that some of them still have physical form?
Oh, they suggested during some of the channelings that I was privy to that there are people among us, whether it's presently or before. They definitely suggested that in ancient times, they would come back to Earth and take on physical form. But here was the problem. Because they have a different energy form that we do, and they are much more connected to other levels of reality, whenever they incarnated, they found it really difficult to be here. And I can almost quote the channeling. It said, we had to develop appropriate physical bodies to be able to cope being here on Earth and have one foot in the other world. So we were the tall people in your culture. We were the ones with the elongated skulls, because you know, humans need the frontal lobe to do critical thinking, whereas the rear lobe, which is the most mysterious part of the brain, that's your spiritual connection. This is why we don't understand much about it yet. It's the bit that they needed to communicate back home. And they said, we found it really difficult. And sometimes people would throw stone at us because we're unusual. We're taller than most human beings. We were very light skinned. We were usually blonde or blue eyed and red haired or green eyed. And they're still with us today, those traits in the Scandinavian culture, especially. I had another thought there for a second, but no, it's going to take a long time to explain. So they do intervene, and they throw in teachers once in a while to sort of put the human race, you know, take them on a different course. And they kept suggesting, they didn't give me any specific names, but they would suggest that they were the teachers that often come by that we are so attracted to, because there's a certain light about them. I suspect that Gandhi was one of them, you know. I don't know why, but I suspect he was. But I said, so, have you stopped coming? I said, yeah, we pretty much stopped coming in your era. And I said, why? Because we got tired of being crucified, he said. Yeah, I said, just because we're advanced doesn't mean we also don't fall for pain and love and all the other things that come with the physical world. We still succumb to these things and disease, you know, and it was difficult. Pain hurts, no matter whether you're a god or a human, it still hurts. So we got tired of being pelted with rocks and crucified. So we're now communicating much more subtly through the symbols in your fields, or through communication through the sacred sites, or stone circles, or temples, or pyramids. Those are the interconnection points between two levels of reality. And this is why we're so attracted to these places to begin with.
Okay, so these initiations is a big deal, and they made these huge temples because of it. You have yourself gone through some processes that you don't want to call them initiations. I think for me, I would call them initiations, because they were life-changing for you. They completely changed the path you're on. And basically, you could say in a way, your world fell apart and a new world got born, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, initiation means to become conscious. So in that point of view, yes, it is an initiation. Most people tend to see initiation as a kind of, you know, dressing up in unusual clothing and going through a certain ritual with torches and candles. That's not what I did. I mean, for me, it was an awakening. So technically it is an initiation. Yes.
Yeah. And so people who are listening out there right now, who are interested in knowing the truth of who they really are, the essence of their being, and living that truth in their lives for the future. and who wants to go through a transformation, like the caterpillar into a butterfly, what would you tell them? What would you suggest that they would focus their time and energy on? And do you have any pointers in guidance on that?
Oh God, yeah. Read all my books and watch my documentaries, of course. No, I suggest going to the sacred places wherever you happen to live. There are sacred places all around the world. Sometimes you have to do a little bit of more homework to understand where they are, because this is where the laws of physics as we know them are much more different. Something happens at these places where the veil between the worlds is much thinner, and it allows you, if you just go there not expecting anything and be in a state of grace, go to the sacred places and just be at peace. And sometimes nothing will happen. Sometimes something will happen. It will transform you. But I guarantee it, the more you do it, the more you go to these places, the more your energy will also start to expand. It's a bit like you're soaking up a little bit of electromagnetic energy, because you are electromagnetic beings. So you're soaking up a little bit at a time, and it's expanding you. And you feel different. You hear different things. Your sense of taste or touch is different. And the more you do it, like driving a car, the better you get at it. Now, someone told me this 25 years ago. I thought they were completely mad. And now for me, it's second nature. I know what I'm going to expect at this particular place. I know the experience that is there waiting for me. And I say, thank you very much. And then I just let it go. And it will actually come to me. So for me, it's become second nature. So I become the very person, the very embodiment of what I was learning when I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I was very skeptical about what was going on, but I kind of believed it, but I was also skeptical at the same time. So for me, it's worked. I'm talking now from personal experience, and I can't be away from the temple too long, because if I am, I will start getting a little bit nervous. It's like my battery is draining. I have to be plugged into that connection, because for me it's become like my extended family. I have never been let down by the beings that are these places. I've never been let down by the temple. They'll always surprise me, and they'll always confront me, and they'll always challenge me, but I know that they have good intention, and they have my highest will and intent in their hands. So I trust where it's going, because I've seen the improvement it's done to me. So if it can change me to be a better person, it can change somebody else. So that's what I always recommend, and follow your heart when you're doing it. So one day you'll think, oh, I think I want to go to Peru, and then you go, actually no, I want to go to Egypt, because each site has a different frequency and a different thing to teach you. And depending on where your subconscious is, your subconscious will guide you, because it knows, it can sense where the information is that it needs to rebuild itself. So you don't think about it too much. Just follow that sort of heart and go, I think I feel like a trip down the Nile. And sure enough, you'll find the answer there in one temple or another.
Okay, are you still in these COVID times? Are you still doing your trips?
Oh yes, it's challenging, but we've had the best trips. I mean, I have a waiting list for Egypt of 320 people. I don't need to advertise the trip, and we have a great time. I mean, I have a very expensive taste, so I try to get the best of everything to people. But no, we do have. I like the people to be comfortable being around a celebrity. Okay. I don't want to think that I am the center of attention. I'm not the center of attention. The temple is the center of attention, and I make sure people know this and remember this by giving you as much free time in these places as possible. I just send you in the right place and let you figure out the answer. It's about you. It's not about me. It's about you.
Yeah.
And I watch people change over 10 days, and they're not the same people when they get back on the plane. And if I can watch that, I've done my job properly.
Yes, absolutely.
It's about watching something that's in here, that's buried in here, come out. And sometimes it'll be difficult. If you like your life the way it is, don't do what I'm telling you right now.
Yeah.
If you like the way things are right now, don't follow my advice, because tomorrow, after the experience, you'll be 180 degrees in the other way, and you'll lose your friends, your family, your house. But you know what? Years later, you'll go, wow, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I'm now on my journey. Yeah. You can't some people are lucky and the change happens effortlessly. And for some people, they have to go the hard way. Yeah. It's just the way it is. But at the end of the day, if you're better at the end of the tunnel, it's great. And I wouldn't exchange this experience for anything else. It's been bloody difficult, but my God, the fringe benefits are wonderful, especially if you do get to have the experience of seeing weird people coming out of stones, that's the great fun. And
Yeah.
sometimes it does happen in the groups, not always, but sometimes. So that's the what I usually tell people: just go out and have some fun.
And so this has changed you as a person in your private life as well,
Oh
like
God, yeah.
how you think, how you feel, how you interact with people, the way you go about business and everything, right?
Everything, except for my taste in music. It's just got even more diverse. But no, it's improved me in all kinds of ways, and it's still improving. You know,
Yeah.
but that's the whole point of being here in the physical world. It's a process of self-improvement all the way through life.
Yeah.
The trick is that you can be an idiot all the way to your deathbed. If on that deathbed you understand where you went wrong and what you did right, and you accept that, and that's your redemption right there.
Yeah.
As long as you leave 1% better than when you arrived, and leave the planet 1% better than when you arrived, you've done a great job.
Yeah.
That's all that's required of you.
Yeah.
Because when you die, you are born again somewhere else, and you have another experience. Life is all about having an experience. That's the mystery of the universe. The soul is just having an experience. This is an experience right now.
Yeah.
You physically die, boom, you'll be in the room next door having another experience.
Yeah.
It's actually really boring, the universe. There's nothing to do but have an experience. And the trick is to learn, to appreciate where you went right and where you went wrong, and fine tune. So yeah, it's I'm just in a process of self-development and slowly getting better, I hope.
Yeah.
But no, we have had some pretty good times during COVID. It's, we take some basic precautions, and we accept the challenges that come with it. And if you're okay with that, you have a great time.
Yeah. And this thing with having fun, like you just mentioned, like when you're going through these transformations, some of us are going through it gracefully, which is a lot of my friends are going through this gracefully, but I have always been this big drama queen. It always had to be totally full of drama, like crazy, emotional and all that stuff. So, we are all very different, and the cards we carry are very different. So we're going to go through this journey one way or the other.
Exactly.
But I think it's important to have fun and smile and laugh, not take yourself too seriously in the process.
Exactly. I mean, when I find that in my tours, I just, for example, in Egypt, the classic one is someone always wants to go swimming in the Nile, and they'll say, "Oh, it'll be an incredible spiritual experience." I go, "Mm-hmm." "Oh, and I want to do this. I've always wanted to do this." "Okay, if that's what you feel, off you go." And she goes into the water. She looks back. "Aren't you coming in?" "No, crocodiles." But you go ahead. If you're enjoying it, that'll be your experience.
Yeah.
And that's what we do, is like we just make fun of everybody, and everybody just is in on the same joke. But it's also that English sense of humor as well, and the sarcasm, and it brings things down to earth. But I've seen very left brain people, such as lawyers, who it takes them a while to get out of their linear thinking, because it's a very stressful job, and it takes them a long week before they finally break down and open up. But when they do, it's like they're in tears, they're crying. They realize that there is also the right brain, and it takes you so long to go from left to right brain. But when they're there, they realize that there's another person inside. And I've watched people, including men, just break down in certain temples, knowing full well that that's what's going to happen to them at that temple, because I know what it does. So, and they'll be complaining for about 5 days. "I haven't experienced this. Nothing's happened." I said, "Just wait till you get to Edfu." "Why?" "Just wait, just be patient." And I'll watch this person. I've got my eye on certain people, and I'll watch this guy, and he'll be breaking down, and we're leaving Edfu, and I put my arm around him and said, "Was that good for you?" I said, "How did you know?" I said, "But was it good for you?" I said, "And now I get it." Well, there you go. That's what you need to know.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful when you see that happening. You realize that people are much softer than, they're going through their own stuff. We don't know what they're going through. You got to give them a little bit of leeway. You got to be a bit patient.
Yeah, because we've been there ourselves. We all been through all that. So we're just going to have some patience with each other.
Yeah, especially right now with this is a very trying experience, but you've got to find the tools, you've got to find the techniques to get you from day to day, and try and find one thing during the day that makes you happy,
Yeah,
even if it's just a stupid joke on Facebook. You know, there's lots of them.
yeah,
Something that just makes you smile. You know, even if it's a cat picture,
yeah,
anything just to get that day going and get into the rhythm of that. You know,
yes.
reading something in a book. There was a guy who I was just in London. I was able to get around quarantine and spend 24 hours in London. Go to a bookshop, and there was a guy who was struggling with suicide for many years, and he helped himself by being on the phone line for the Samaritans, for people who were jumping off bridges. So by telling people not to jump off the bridge, he heals himself too. Now, what
Uh-huh.
a wonderful thing. And while he's doing this, he's learning how to paint in a very sort of Zen Chinese watercolor way. And also he's learning about Zen Buddhism. He just wrote a beautiful book called Big Panda and Tiny Dragon. And I recommend it. I've been recommending it to everybody because this is a guy that actually lived through pain, and he lifted himself, and now he's a light to everybody else. And it's
Yeah.
a wonderful book of little sayings and little affirmations, which are beautifully drawn, beautifully published. And I thought, wow, what a lovely way that this guy, you know, came out of a dark place and is now helping others. And it's wonderful. So you've got to find these little tools in your life, whatever it is, even if it's just listening to music, just to
Yes.
get you through, and be the change you wish to see, and others will react to that too.
Do some gardening, grow some veggies, whatever it is.
Exactly. Eat
Like
sushi.
simple stuff. Or just go and smile to some people. It, it,
Exactly.
it can be many things. What was this guy's name, and what is the book called? If you,
Oh, let me get the book for you. This is live, people.
yeah, yeah,
Now, this is where you realize that my ego has come down several pegs because I'm actually advertising someone else's book. It's
yeah,
by
yeah.
James Norbury, called Big Panda and Tiny Dragon, and there it is.
Okay, good.
And I recommend the hardcover. This is the British version. I don't know if it's in different editions around the world, but good paper, good printing, and those are some of his pictures.
Oh, beautiful. That's
It
very
is.
good.
It's a delightful book,
Yeah.
and you can dip into any page, and there'll be a little sort of Zen phrase just to get you through the day.
Oh,
So
wow.
great
Beautiful.
self-help book. Well done, James.
Beautiful. Well, let me promote your book, your books a little bit, because
Well, okay.
you've written so many books, but anybody who wants to go and read much more about the art of resurrection, initiation, and what we've been covering today, you wrote a book about that.
Yeah, The Lost Art of Resurrection is the most direct one. All the books are kind of interchangeable. They kind of, there's a
Connection.
it's kind of hard to they're not kind of hard partitions. They all flow into each other, and it was unplanned. I had no idea, but that one specifically deals with the concept of initiation, how Christianity went completely the wrong way.
Yeah.
This is sort of a very unique idea by a very unique guy, one of many, I should say. But it's also found in in other books, depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
These
I'll just
shining
go for
ones.
all of them.
These shining ones are appearing all over the place when you're writing, and I love it because I feel I know you. I feel like I know you. Like I feel I know your inner spiritual journey by reading I read all the books except the last one. I'm only halfway through on that one, but
Well, I won't ruin it for you, but you're going to be coming across them again.
yeah, well,
I thought I was done with them on the first book, and then they pop up in the second book, and then the fourth book, I go, oh, the Shining Ones and the Watchers are here again.
yeah,
And then the new one on Scotland. Little did I know that to understand Scotland and Ireland, you have to end up in Sardinia and Armenia, which of course, oh, we're back to the Lords of Anu again. So
yeah,
what did they become? So I'm not going to ruin it for you, but they're still there. Yeah, no, I feel like I'm having this family journey, this personal family journey as well. I'm
yeah.
beginning to feel that I maybe connected to them in some way because I'm very kind of attached to them after a while. I feel like they're actually helping me in my journey. It's
I
very
think
mischievous.
I think their essence in either biologically or spiritually is definitely in the human race. We
Oh,
are,
I think so.
yeah. So
Yeah.
we are them, and they are us in some way or form.
Yeah. Well,
So,
you're Danish, I believe.
yes, I'm Danish.
The place, Denmark. That's where the lords of Danu eventually ended up, and they went up to Scandinavia. They eventually ended up in Ireland called the Tuatha de Danann. The name changes slightly because of language,
Yeah.
but the lords of Anu eventually, by 3000 BC, they're in Ireland as well under a slightly different name.
Yeah.
That's the connection here. You've got to look at linguistics.
Yeah.
And they split from what was then Scythia, which is around the Black Sea. One of the groups goes north to Danube, on the Danube.
Danube.
They create the culture around Denmark, Scandinavia, and Norway. And the other group went south through Malta to Sardinia, where they are very well known, round to Portugal, where I was born, and then up through there to Ireland. And they made this sort of pincer movement across Europe. Fascinating story. I had no idea it was going to go there, but that's what I enjoy about my work. I have no plan. I don't know where the story's going. I'm following the trail of breadcrumbs of information. That's kind of fun. So I can't be making it up from my own head.
No, you're just discovering what's already there. In Denmark, we have this Valhalla with the Odin and Thor, and so we have all these Nordic gods. And when I read the whole Anunnaki story, I see a lot of. I'm like, wait a minute, are we talking about the same people? Or
same people, yeah.
Like, what's going on here?
And so, even the fish, the half fish, half man symbology of Enki, the Sumerian god, which by the way is pre-Sumerian. I mean, the Sumerians only show up around 4000 BC. The Armenians were there before there. And before that, there was the whole Anu culture in the Middle East. So the Sumerians actually came in quite late. That was a surprise. But that yes, the half fish, half man entity ends up in Finland with the Mare people and the Finn folk, and they eventually go around the Denmark and Norway, and they eventually end up in northern Scotland, and they're still known by that name up there.
Yeah,
incredible. So, I had no idea.
So if you're kind of like a Sherlock Holmes, and you're finding all these clues. You're finding all these clues, and they are everywhere. In every country you go, these clues are everywhere. Like I mean, it's crazy. It is obvious that there has been these beings around that were very different from us, and they have had a huge influence on who we are today.
Absolutely. And in the previous book, The Missing Land, was very much about that. We keep focusing on the temples, but we forget about the people. And my focus is on the people. And I wanted to find out, how do these people connect? Do they connect at all? And there was no obvious connection. So we heard about the Viracochas in South America, and we hear about people in the Pacific, and then we talk about people in Japan and the Middle East. I think, is there a connection to all of this? Well, until you understand the local language, and that the names are not names, they're titles, and they actually mean something, you realize that the lords of Anu, the shining ones, are literally all connected by different names all around the world. That was a big surprise and a shock to me, to find that Viracocha had arrived in South America with his 7 Hai Wapanti, which means nothing to you and me, unless you know Aymara. And then in Aymara, it means the 7 shining ones. That's what the word means. And I'm thinking, my God, these are the same people that came from the Middle East. Yes, they were. They actually sailed there from the Middle East, and people in Easter Island still knew this story, because they ended up in New Zealand, where they live today. And there's only 8,000 of them, called the Waitaha. And they have that story to tell. So this is that journey of that book, which is an incredible, I mean, it's a huge, huge book. I mean, it's like, it nearly did my head in. But I had no idea that all of these people were the same brother and sisterhood. They're all connected by different names, but they are the same entity. That's what was really surprising.
It's amazing. So we need to discover more about our past, but I think also we need to bring this into the present moment and into our lives, in our own individual lives. And I feel the key there is this initiation to go in and visit these temples, and also go in your meditations and tune into this wisdom that has been, you've been exposed to a lot of this information by seeking out these temples and the crop circles, etc. And I urge other people to do the same. So where can people find you to get your books and find you, your websites, etc.?
Invisibletemple.com.
Okay, that was very simple.
Don't support the rich guy that sells those books online, please. He's already rich.
Yeah. Okay.
Support your local author directly.
Yes.
We're
So
struggling to keep up with online bookstores, if you know what I mean.
yeah. So basically, people can buy those books even for like electronic versions on your website.
Absolutely, or
Okay.
worldwide.
So if I want to read this book on my Kindle, I can still buy it on directly on your website.
You click the link on my site, but that takes you to Amazon. Unfortunately, I can't do the electronic version, but there's a link that connects everything, and I'll actually get 50 cents.
You're making 50 cents?
I'll make 50 cents from that link.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
You'd be surprised how little authors get. So a $24 book, if you're lucky, you'll make $6 profit.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and if people buy secondhand from Amazon, you don't make nothing. And Jeff makes twice the amount of money from secondhand books. We get nothing. And musicians get it even worse, because you can, once you download the file, a song, you can share it with everybody for free. So they're getting even worse than the authors.
Yeah.
So I try to support people when I can, if I can afford it directly. One of my favorite musicians is in Mali. I have everything that he's ever recorded, and I went and found his website. It's in French, and I actually bought the CDs from him, and he said, it's going to cost a fortune shipping. I said, yeah, but you're getting paid.
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not making some other guy rich. I'm making you rich, I hope. And I don't mind waiting 2 weeks for the CD to arrive. I've got time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, earlier in this talk, you mentioned you were selling something. What was it? What else do you sell on your website? Is there any other ways?
Oh, there's 13 documentaries as well. I have not many people are doing DVDs anymore. I like DVDs. Yes. So I make about 100 DVDs now for people who want the old stuff. And then you can click the link to Vimeo, and you can start your own Vimeo library, or subscribe to Gaia, which is where a lot of my stuff is nowadays. Okay. So either way, there's 3 ways to watch the documentaries. There's a lot of them. Okay. And there's also the crop circle cards, which are very interesting. I've never advertised them. I've never told people about them, and people find them. And there are some very unusual things going on with those things, and they're used in healing modalities all around the world in the strangest ways. Yeah. So there's a whole page dedicated just to that. So if it feels right for you, go for it. Like I said, I've never advertised them, and I let people find them on their own. Okay. Well, I can tell you, I bought those cards many years ago. Oh, yeah. Yes, I did, and I love them. And my wife, she's doing sacred geometry arts, and she is using them more than I do, actually. Oh, really? As an inspiration to her artwork. Yes. Oh, that's very cool. Wonderful. Yeah, very powerful stuff. So thank you so much for your time. My pleasure, Josh. Please continue doing what you do. Well, thank you. I'm trying. Yeah, hopefully this year I'll get to do a few different things. I like a different challenge. So I want to go back to Sardinia and finish the job that I started there, and maybe go back to Portugal and restart a tour there that I used to do. But it was very popular. We got a lot of work done. We also drank entire towns dry. We had way too much fun in the Portugal tour, and I want to take a few people back there and mix the Templars up with some sacred sites, you know, because they were doing this too. If you ever come to South America, let me know. I would love to join you. Yeah, I mean, we just came back from Peru about, what, 2 months ago? Yeah, it was challenging, I have to say. There's a lot of like double masks and face shields in certain places. You can't really concentrate when you're like that. But we also got around those problems, and somehow we made it work, and everybody had a great time. Okay, good. Mostly because you're chewing coca leaf all day long legally. So yeah, really helps. I have my coca leaves from the garden. Oh no, I am so jealous. fresh from the garden. So oh, no. Yes. Oh, forget the tour. I'm coming over and staying with you. Actually, you should come and visit the Sacred Mountain of Mandango. I would love to hear your feedback on that one. That might be interesting. I'll see if I can do a side trip from Lima next time. Yeah, if you come, I'll take care of everything. Everything's taken care of. You're on. It'll be my honor to have you. Oh, thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your time, and I truly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Be well.